Back in here. We back in the building. When how orange this looks on screen. That looks about normal. Y'all can see what's in that. Cold press. Yeah. Guess I didn't pay attention. I thought this would be the one with apple in it. I actually make this one at home. Orange, carrot, ginger root, turmeric, and lemon. This is a common one I make because when I make my juice, color is very important. So yeah. But yeah, it's been a minute. As y'all know, they found an old video with some information in it, and they took it down, which sucks as usual. Finding old videos and you don't even know what you had in them joints. You don't really have much of a defense for it, but I didn't care. So what I did, I went on my page and anything that I think they would have used to ding, because I actually read through their when they restrict your page for a little while, I usually put I read the limitations they had on it. When I read the limitations that they had on on the whole situation that we got going on in the world today, it was almost to the point of unfairness. Like when you read like the reason that they could hold your page down. I know they like changed it over time to like make it like more difficult, which is why it catches up with people. Yo, Google me in the building. Um, I can kind of understand that when they do that, but it was too much. It was to the point where it was like, shit. If you ask me, just the way they had it written, if you were to mention vitamin D, your page would get taken down. Like if you said specifically said the words um about what's going on in the world today, and then you started talking about like vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and stuff like that. It was written out as if that could get your page taken down, just because those two things were in the same video. So I thought that was kind of corny, but it's whatever. When you don't control the platform, you can't control the information being disseminated out. So I have a friend of mine's he's making recommendations on other places to do content that's like uncensored, besides like Patreon and all that. But we'll see. I'll evaluate all of them, see what's best, see what people are willing to stick to, and then go from there. Um, I don't know. After they restrict your page, I don't know how well the word goes out because far more people would have known that I was live by now. So, you know, but it is what it is. They'll know later on that this video is up. As far as new information, if you have not been over to the Urban Nerds Worldwide channel, our first, I guess you could say, official video of one of the young urban nerds doing Mike Carter in the building. One of our first official videos of the young urban nerds doing the content is up on Urban Nerds Worldwide page. And for those of you who haven't followed yet, it's Urban Nerds, and the nerds has an apostrophe S. The algorithm for that page is probably much greater than it was in the beginning, because in the beginning when you would type the name in, if you didn't have that apostrophe S, it was kind of hard to find. But I think now, because we got so much content on there, and we have quite a few followers on there, it's easier to find it. But yeah, the young urban nerd, his name is Menelik, and he did Daisy Bates. The video itself is probably no more than 2 minutes long. His portion of the video is about maybe 45 seconds to about maybe a minute tops of lines. But it was good because he was fluid. He got through it. He got the information across quick. We did it up with the graphics or whatever. So yeah, that's the first official video. You'll know it when you go on Urban Nerds Worldwide because I used a very bright pink color um on the actual thumbnail. So it's very easy to spot that that's the official video. I will go on that channel and do a little bit of cleanup, some of the old advertisements we put up. Take those down so it's just pure like content and stuff like that. I might take down some of the live streams I did because I want them to be a little more creative looking. So I'll probably do that. And again, for those of you who just got here, I'm talking about the updates on the Urban Nerds Worldwide. Um, because that's pretty much where me and George been hanging out. Whenever they like take a page down or whatever, that's where I hang out at. So I'll do the Urban Nerds Worldwide content over on Instagram and here on YouTube. What else is new? For those who are in the gaming world, right? The Urban Nerds Gamer, right? Um, they have announced Street Fighter 6. So that's hype train for that. It's obviously not going to come out this year. It'll probably be next year. It'll probably drop. So for the short period, all of the fighting game tournaments are going to have still Street Fighter 5 for a little bit because I think they're in the championship edition mode. Um, I'm still trying to get the young Urban Nerds to put some teams together so we can have oh, Emmanuel's in the building. Excellent try. Would it be like Russell Lawrence? Yo. Yeah, y'all probably know if y'all were following me on Instagram, y'all know that they put a strike on the page and they took me down for a week. And even when a week went by and I tried to go live, I don't know what their time scale runs as because it still had me restricted for a little bit longer. So that's why it took a little bit longer to jump back on. So yeah, this is just hopping back in the building real quick, so to speak, right? But yeah, I was talking about Urban Nerds Gaming, right? So we have a gaming center that just opened up not too long ago. You guys might have saw me live there at the Urban Nerds, not Urban Nerds, uh was it Nerd Street Gaming? Yeah, I think it's Nerd Street Gaming down there on Broad Street in Philadelphia. So I was there for one of the fighting game tournaments. I was just checking the place out. And I did a quick live while I was there so people could see what the layout was like. For games like Call of Duty, Fortnite, a lot of your children play these games, these shooting games. I would recommend the location for that. For fighting games, yeah, you can go and use their equipment. It's cheap. It's from what I read, it's like $5 for an hour, so it's very cheap for kids to go there and play. For fighting games, it's not my favorite venue, so it's right back where I need to be. Yeah, for fighting games, I don't recommend that gaming center unless they change up the background because when they would do it at the hotels, it would be a really huge projection screen at the front of the room and more chairs obviously in there, and they had the food working for them, but the whole there's the stage, the players are way back in the stage. It's kind of hard to see. If you're trying to do photos, you would have to kind of like find a way to get on stage or sneak around back. So, and then they had 4 large TV screens, probably about 60-inch TV screens up top, 4 of them in a row. So it's like when the finals for the video game tournaments would happen, it would cause it was like a clash. Like I'm looking at 4 screens next to each other so I can see what's going on in each tournament, but the top 8 in any tournament is supposed to be focused on, the specific top 8 of that game set. So if it's Tekken, it's Street Fighter, it's Mortal Kombat, it's Soul Calibur, it's Blaze Blue, is Guilty Gear. Each one is supposed to have their block so that their top 8 plays, so everyone sitting in the crowd can focus on that game. So for that reason, Nerd Street Gaming, I don't prefer that location unless they change the layout and the way that the top 8 of the fighting tournaments go. But in the hotels, it's hype in the hotels. RTP in the building, Barbara Saunders, would it be like? I jumped in a little bit for KT today. I saw a little bit of what he had going on. He was talking about a couple new herbs. But on the way back home from this gig I got tonight, I'll be able to catch up on that easy because where I'm at, this is about 35 minutes from home. I know KT was on longer than that, but like I said, tonight I'll have caught up with everything I need to catch up with. So, yeah, what else? You probably saw, I don't know how it is, like if you're in the United States, and I think in the UK, you probably heard that they're pulling back on the mandate stuff. So, restrictions for going out is being lifted. So, people will be able to do their thing. And I think for us, it's this, they either did it already or it's this Thursday. I might be confusing us with the UK, but yeah, they're pulling back on the restrictions of going out to eat and public locations and stuff like that. So looking good for that. I was in New York. I had a gig in New York this weekend. I thought that they might have had some restrictions, but they had none. They a lot of people as they see fit, they would come in and had a mask on or whatever. Yours finished on Thursday. Yeah, see, like I said, that was in the UK. So those restrictions will be lifted from that. If you guys also haven't noticed, There is now an article going around. The one I got was on Zero Hedge, but there's now an article going around talking about all the data that they did not put out on purpose because they were worried about misinterpretation. So there is data that has been coming out slowly. They didn't just blast released it, but they're admitting right now, like, yeah, there was information about, the efficacy or whatever that people might have misconstrued and misinformed about. What they're basically saying is you wouldn't have interpreted the data the way that they did in all cases. So for that reason, it was going to make it difficult for them to want to release that data. So it was unreleased data concerning efficacy when it comes to the Jabicals, right? So yeah, they're talking about a fourth, but at the end of the day, we know that originally what they were supposed to do was they were supposed to market this towards people in the high risk category because that's where the bulk of your issues came from. It was the people who had comorbidities and the people who caught it at the same time. That was your and age, right? That was your high risk. And what happened was they weren't targeting it towards that. They were pushing and targeting it towards everybody. And I think they just did that because they spent a lot of money on new tech. And after spending a lot of money on new tech, you got to get your money back. Like we said, this was a money grab, which also went along. And don't get me wrong, I don't think it was a greed thing necessarily. I don't think it had anything to do with greed. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that if you are someone who is into these sciences and you're trying to advance, money is an absolute necessity. And to advance, you need to know that your product works the way that you want it to work. So for that reason alone, the unfair part for us was they used their power to market and get it out there and get it tested in the world in which they wanted it tested and used us to do that. So they didn't want you, truthfully, if they had it the way they wanted it, they didn't want anybody having the option. They wanted to get it out there and spread it out as far as they possibly could so that they can check and do statistics about what it is they created as far as they could. Was the intent to harm or kill? I don't think so. I think the intent again was to find to get a real working situation of what works and what does not work. Because at the end of the day, it's all about control. You don't want anything that goes rogue on you. So, and that's the issue. Like, if you gotta treat it like yourself, right? Like if you're a person who invented something and you need a large sum of, like, you're trying to go worldwide, like we're urban nerds worldwide, right? You're trying to go worldwide with something to see how it works in the real world situation on a grand scale. You need to know that it helps before it hurts, because if you have your own group of people, you need to know that first. So you need the percentages to work in your favor. Now, here's the corny part. We don't know if you're also testing it too. It looks almost as if you're just getting everyone else to do it so that you could just kind of sit back and observe. And those type of people have to exist when you're putting a product out. You have to have those who are like, no, not you, them. And I remember somebody was telling me one of the gurus up in Silicon Valley was like that. Their son came in and started messing with some of the tech they were building, and the dad stopped them like, whoa, 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 what is you doing? This technology is not for us. This is for them, for the consumers, basically, because they understand the parameters and the issues behind it. And you'd be surprised how much weight genetics pulls. Genetics pulls a lot of weight in today's world because you want to have the strongest and purest genetics, and that includes not invading your body with anything foreign, eating some of the greatest foods in the world. Like, y'all know, the way it works is, if you get that food where like the animals first killed, the vegetables are first picked, nature is, growing things in the wild, that goes to the rich people. Like, we've been trained in our community to tell everybody that, food is expensive, when really the right food was the correct cost. And they took the leftovers from that and created the cheap food and the GMO food and the modified food and the pesticide sprayed food. And they made that real cheap, and people took that as the standard of food. Now, obviously, food can be cheap if you grow it on your own, but we know in the world, time and money exchange one another. So when you're growing your own food, that takes time. So you want to grow a lot, know how to preserve it, or know how to grow it within season, or live in a climate where it's just growing season long. And obviously, if you got that skin tone right, it's best for you to be in warm climates. So We need to keep that in mind. So yeah, so when y'all hit, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to tell y'all that Whole Foods is the highest quality, Trader Joe's the highest quality. Highest quality is what you know. If you grow your own food, you have really good soil. I remember I was watching this documentary years ago, and this was around the time where Zeitgeist was blowing up. There was another documentary that came out, and he might have even been in that one. But there was a documentary where the guy was talking about, hurry up, turn over your soil, get your soil back together. And he said, the method, I got it. Everything except one part. The one part nobody could figure out. He said, to turn over whatever your soil is at, it's going to take a few years for it to turn over correctly and get its nutrient factor back. So what you want to do is, wet the soil, start turning it over. And he said, what you're going to put into your soil is wood ash, barbecue sauce, and then pee on it. I got 2 out of the 3. The barbecue sauce thing, that was the one where I'm like, I wonder why he said barbecue sauce. And that was a long time ago. To this day, I'm not 100%. Maybe it was a certain type. Now, what's the base of barbecue sauce? Ketchup and mustard. So, mustard seed, we know that that'll have some chemical compounds in it. Tomato sauce, obviously. You got some sugars in there and stuff like that. So I don't know. I guess there's just something about that. I never figured out quite why the barbecue sauce. Um, the When they say peeing on it, well, that sometimes, like when it's colored pee, like your body's letting out excess minerals and water. Um, and it's I guess you could say a denitrogenated version of the waters of your body. But there's nitrogen in urine. So it's, your NPK, right? Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. The 3 things to just make stuff grow. So a lot of that you can find in urine. So outside of the urine, wood ash, because I was explaining to you guys in all of the videos where I talked about cooking food in relation to protein, that just because you overcook the food doesn't mean that the mineralization of the food is gone. What's lost is the structure and the shape that makes it perform certain functions. That's what you actually lose when you cook it too much. But if there's like, now there's a third part to that, but I'll explain that in the middle, in a minute. When you cook the food, if you got like iron, magnesium, selenium, you got these different things in it, right? If you burn the food, the minerals still in there. It's still in there. Whether you got oils or waters or whatever inside of there, it's all still in there. What you lose is anything that evaporates off from the high heat. So some things have a specific heating temperature, that a threshold that it cannot go above. Now, I don't get that deep into the chemistry of it all, but just know that exists. And when you have steam coming off of your food, what you can smell is the gas form of, maybe enzymes, carbohydrates, proteins, pigments, all those what they call phytonutrients that they tell us we get in the food. But just remember, when you're breathing it in, you're still getting it. It's like when you're on the beach. When you're on the beach, the oceans are full of iodine. So when that mist comes off the beach from the wind blowing and the water's crashing, you're breathing in some of that iodine. So people who hang out at the beach a lot tend to have a lower probability of having, iodine deficiency issues, which, iodine is heavy for the thyroid. It's a part of regulating hormone activity. So we definitely need the iodine. But yeah, you got the food, that you got what's in the pan. No matter how you cook it, the pieces that make it up are still in there. Whatever evaporates off, if you can smell it, you're getting some of that in. Because those are gases that can evaporate off. They can go from a liquid to a gas, and they can evaporate off, maybe stick to the walls, just like how smoke does. It'll stick to the walls. You might have a really dirty stove. Some of the stuff sticks to the stove. And people are looking at that as if it's some type of like, oh, that's just smoke and soot and all this stuff like that. And it's like, that's chemicals. Like, that's combined chemicals. And remember, when you gas off things when you're cooking and it hits the walls and it starts turning brown and deep brown and black, that melanated color, right? That's blending in with the paints and stuff. That's why, it ain't like that's some mineral you're going to go lick, obviously, right? So you got to keep in mind. So there's the gas form, liquid form, solid form, and then there's the structure of it all. So when the food is raw, You keep everything because there's not enough heat to gas off anything. The fibers are real tightly packed because it's sitting in the wind and on the tree, so it's really airtight. And even if the waters hit it, like if you guys got really good vegetation that you grow in your backyard, when the waters hit it, it beads off. And that's because of that it seals off. Like it's supposed to slide off, hit the ground, and absorb into the soil, and then the roots pull all of that in. So when you're cooking, that's all about shape. And you need to maintain that shape because when you maintain the shapes of the proteins and the enzymes, that's what allows you to help break the food down. That's why you don't want to burn and overcook it. What you want to do is when you get it, pull it straight out of nature, and it has it's got a good green look. Like let's say you got a leaf of kale, it's green, but it ain't vibrant green. It's like a palish light green. You could tell it's very healthy. The fibers are real tight. It feels like you can't poke through it as easy. But you notice it self-degrades. The moment you pull it from the so-called breast or titty of the world or womb of like with babies, when they first come out, put them on the breast so they can start drinking and feeding. They have to remain attached because once that cord comes off, the nutrients going from the mom directly into the body, into the baby, stop. So you get the baby onto the breast to continue the exchange, but you also shape the baby's body to get used to the elements and the environment that's going on outside. So with food, it's the same way. The moment you pull it off the tree, it takes a slow degrade. That's why we put it in cold locations. So if you're in a climate where things grow and then it gets cold real fast, that cold slows the metabolism down. So you still got everything in there, and it's in an extremely slow degrading. But you're in a hot climate when that thing drops down off the tree, and then them liquids and the bacteria and stuff, everything starts to kind of melt and get gooey. Like when you see things go bad, you notice it's kind of like you got this plant and then it starts to get wet and wither. That's from the inside out, and then it starts to fall apart. So you want to get that food off once you pull it out the ground. Like if you grow your own garden, pull it off the ground, do your prep. You probably do a quick rinse just so there's no dirt on it. You're not hard scrubbing your food because you grew it, right? You want that elemental portion of it. You're not supposed to go in there and triple wash and quadruple wash. You look at your plants, make sure there's no bugs crawling on it. Turn it over, make sure there's no discoloration, no white flies been hitting it or nothing like that. You got you a nice leaf. You rinse that thing off, get the dirt off of it, and then you start doing your prep, whether that's cutting or whether it's throwing it right in a colander and steaming that thing up. Because when you hit it with the right amount of heat, it goes from that pale color to that vibrant color, which means now the proteins are what I like to call pepped up. It's ready for you to consume it. But it's still taut, like with broccoli, right? It can be vibrant green and still have that crunch to it. It's not like it'll just fall apart like butter because you overboiled it or overcooked it, right? And it's got a pale color. It's not like that. It's not too raw either, where when you eat it, it's stringy. Like everyone knows asparagus for that. Asparagus is real stringy if you don't cook it right. You cook it correct, asparagus not only is vibrant green, but when you eat it, it snaps and it chews through easily. It chews through almost like warm cucumber. So yeah, that's very good. If you soak leafy greens in slightly salty water, the green gets a little bit more vibrant. Yeah, because when you put salt, this is why we put salt in our dishes. Salt draws things out. So salt can usually liquid. So if you put salt on top of the leaf, now y'all know most of these leaves that you grow, if you rub them in your hand, there's liquid inside. So if you hit it with salt and water, it's going to cause the liquid inside to start to pour through. And that's where salt causes things. That's why it elevates taste, because it pulls that aromaticity out. So it peps things up a little bit more. So water, salt, a little bit of heat. That's why they combine all these things. You can hit it with the salt. But what happened? Notice when we cook, we hit it with the salt and the heat, because the salt, we call them mineral salts, right? So if you take a food, that's where the concept came from. Like in the ocean, there's a lot of mineral salts. So even though you're getting a lot of your mineralization out of the water, it's very salty. So when you combine the two, if you take your food, your greens, some of the greens you eat, it don't taste salty, right? So you throw it in a pan, you got a little bit of heat on it. So the heat starts to hit it, starts to loosen up the fibers, and it starts to sweat, and everything gets real vibrant. Now you hit it with the salt. You hit it with the salt. The salt starts to absorb and draw out more of those constituents within the plant. And now when you taste it, it's a more vibrant taste. It also causes that aromaticity to come out faster. So salt is like really huge This is where the concept of the cooking like that comes from, the heat and the salts. When you get things to draw out of the plant, now you have the mineral of the plant and the salt. So now you have mineral salts. See, there's another way to get mineral salts when you make your herbs. There is a term for it, and damn it, I cannot remember the name for it. But what happens is you guys are used to getting tinctures that are liquid, right? You know, you got I don't have one in the car. I did have it in the car earlier today, but I don't have it right now. But you know, you get your tincture, you unscrew, and you got the eyedropper, and you drop it in. But there's another step to creating that. So how would you make it, right? Let's say you're making a standard tincture. You got your high quality vodka. I hope you ain't buying no cheap vodka for this. Your high quality vodka. You put some of that in the pan. You put your herbs inside of that. You send that heat up, and then you turn. Well, what happens is you put the alcohol in there. You send the heat up. When the heat gets real hot, you put the herbs in. You turn the heat down low. You let that thing simmer together for a little while, so you could get everything in that plant to draw out into the alcohol solution. Right now, most people say, "Oh yeah, you strain that off and you bottle that up. You sit in a dark bottle and you put it up for a while and let it infuse in a dark and cool place." But nobody ever really comments on what you do with the leftover stuff you just strained out. So those little plant fibers you just strained out, that's the mineral. That's the earth, as they call it. So I think they call it the mercury, the salts, and the earth. It's something like that. It's like a trifecta. I have this herb book that tells you the three. Y'all know I'm not the most fluent in herbs, but I have kind of a broad based knowledge, right? So what it is those strainings that you have, you actually can take those out and you cook those down. You cook them into about a into an ash. And once you get it in, you do that proper constituent, you know, that proper chemistry, so to speak, and you turn it into ash, you introduce that back into the tincture. Now you include the earth. So you have the full embodiment of the plant now in your tincture. They're a lot more expensive for you to get them that way, but if you can get them that way, that's the way you want it. So you don't just have the liquid component with the phytochemicals and stuff like that in it and some of the minerals drawn out. Now you get some of that earth in there too, that those fibrous portions of it, those salts, right? And this is why I told y'all when you cook and you burn, you don't lose the heavy minerals. You lose the shape they were in that was going to do functions in your body, especially enzymes, because enzymes is a type of protein. So it's almost like if you get a car engine and it comes with a ratchet or a wrench and all the tools you need to take the engine apart and put it back together. That's what the enzymes are for. So the plant comes with its own tools and stuff to help break it down when it gets inside of you. When you overcook it, the materials that make up the enzyme and the protein fall apart. So without the shape, they don't do the function. So you got this mineral sitting in there, and you got to get your body to kind of slowly now work things apart and grab what it needs to grab. Where if you had all the enzymes still in it, you would have had faster digestion, better assimilation, and things like that. So that's what that's all about. So you got to remember the earth component. I will always talk about this. It's funny because Dr. Inky, I hope y'all got his page now because he's been putting up a lot of content, even old content. One of the videos he put up was the event me and him did in Philadelphia. And I looked at that whole event. I needed to see his part and my part. Y'all need to go through that whole video. It's great, like looking at it in hindsight. It was a few years ago. I threw an event in South Philly. Dr. Inky decided he gonna bring the kids and he gonna come down. Like he made the offering. I just wanted him to come and attend and hang out. But he made the offering to come speak. And on his channel, he calls it the Philadelphia Experiment. My events are called Health Nature. So when he came, I pretty much did like this long, you might as well call it important overview of all the different areas in health that we should know about, all the different issues and things. Like in the beginning, I talk about frequency, vibration, magnetism, spin, Fibonacci sequence, and all that. And I hit these things. I'll probably give everything about 3 minutes apiece. I hit each one a little bit. I don't go too deep because it's a lot of content, and we only had about 5 hours in the venue. So I had about 2 hours of that. Dr. Inky had about 2 hours, and there was a gap in the middle. So I'm going over things. I'm going over adrenaline. I'm showing slides with bone and what minerals and stuff make that stuff up. I even went. It was funny because me and Inky did not plan that together, but things work together so well. Like for instance, I talked about grass, generally recognized as safe, which is one of those catchphrases they use that make people feel so warm and fuzzy, and it don't even make sense, right? How can you have something that's generally recognized as safe? It's either safe or it's not. I think that's what I said in the actual event. Dr. Inky mentioned grass in his part of it. Another part, Dr. Inky's was doing a lot about intelligent design and light, how important light is, right? So when he was talking about light, um, he also mentioned something I had mentioned. It was funny because this was always my point of view, and he actually mentioned it in his side of the lecture, which is as big as the electromagnetic spectrum is, we always talk about all of it is light, and light is information. And with light being information, what I said was just because you can't see the light doesn't mean it's not there. The light you can see is in the visible spectrum. So there's light that's visible and there's light that's invisible to the naked eye. So when you look at the whole electromagnetic spectrum, it's about what light you can see versus what you can't see. But at the end of the day, it's all light. Where there is a vibration, there is going to be light, whether you can see it or not. And you know that there's a vibration there because when two things come close together, they create a friction. And friction produces light, heat, magnetism. Electricity as a part of that, right? Because when you start to vibrate hard enough, you can see the electricity. So you got light, which is the standing information, and you got the electricity, the capacity under which that information moves. So you have nerve channels in your body, you got phosphorus everywhere in your body. And in that video, Dr. Inky was showing you where he was even showing you like the chemistry stuff, like when you do glycolysis, right? When you break down sugar in your body, you start seeing the word phosphorus behind everything. Your DNA, phosphorus and sugar backbone with a nucleotide. So there's going to always be a phosphorus, and it's usually close to attached to sugars, right? So you got these complicated terms like phosphoenol pyruvate, bisphosphate. All these breakdowns of sugars and fats, you always find phosphorus somewhere nearby. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, GTP. I think that's guanidine triphosphate. One of those, right? Because you got adenosine, and I think it's guanine triphosphate. So, and they both have their cyclic ends. Like there's a triple, there's a double, which is GDP. So you got ATP, ADP, AMP. So adenosine triphosphate, adenosine diphosphate, adenosine monophosphate. And when it's in the mono end, it becomes cyclic because it needs to keep forming um, uh, diphosphates and triphosphates to keep the system going. But at that point, you got so much adenosine in your system, right? The first part, there's so much adenosine from the broken down phosphorus in your system, your body knows to shut down. You get tired and stuff like that. So, ATP, we got nicknames for it in the gym. We call it money. Some people call it energy. You got mag ATP. So there's a really important part in Dr. Inky's portion where he was showing you, he was like, this is the formula I work by. And he gave you guys a fast breakdown. He was like, I know the electricity is generated from the iron and copper in the body. I know that the magnesium is what makes things work. I wonder how many people that got by. Because he was like, even with ATP, it's called mag ATP. Where magnesium exists, the process can physically manifest. And that was huge. Like a lot of people, that probably grazed by a lot of people in his side of the lecture. Like, for instance, you want your bowels to work? Magnesium. Magnesium combined with what? Combine it with citrate and watch how crazy things come out, right? So you got magnesium citrate, magnesium threonate, sorate, magnesium. Shoot, I done seen so many versions now. It's amazing how many versions that you can find of magnesium. And one of the hardest thing about getting minerals in your body is knowing what combination to get them in so they're not mixed in correctly. Like, for instance, selenomethionine. That's the way you want to get selenium, because selenium is combined with an amino acid. Like, the book is called Minerals for the Genetic Code. If y'all haven't gotten that book yet, y'all should get Minerals for the Genetic Code. There's a portion of that book that shows you the mineral and the amino acid and how the charge of the two are supposed to line up to get them to work. And that's where you get your combination of minerals that work. And when you look up selenium, you're going to see methionine is next to it. And when I went to the store to check in on that, selenomethionine was right there on the bottle. So you also want to make sure you don't get rock minerals. So we try and find these combinations in nature in plants, because plants are going to come with the enzymes to make it work, which is the shape. I spend a lot of time talking about shape, right? So that's the gist of that. So if you haven't seen, I don't think he named the video this time the Philadelphia Experiment, but that's what the actual original video was called. My name is in the video that he put up, so I would suggest you guys definitely check that out. Really good information in there, and you got about 4 total hours of information, so you can't go wrong there. That's good times. A couple of people who would be in our live streams are actually speaking on that video. You got he goes under the name Niopia Manicato, which we call, we know him as Freddie. You got Amber Glow. She was in there doing some speaking on the video, and that was when Inky put them up on the mic to talk a few things about what he had going on, right? You said there's a new orange, I know what you mean, orange 2 variant now. When does the madness end? It is keep in mind, it is an RNA virus. The madness never really ends. It's like the flu virus. No one asks when does the flu virus end, because they're used to it. Like, this is where the what they called herd immunity came from. When a lot of people get it, their bodies are exchanging a lot of information to stay ahead of the game. So horizontal gene transfer, you can use that as one of the concepts. So the madness does not end. You just you figure out what the problem is with the things that's causing the deaths, and you correct them. So since we know that the deaths are mainly in the people usually above the 60 range, they have a comorbidity, they're obese, like, there's certain things attached to that. So you start to address those problems, and you get stronger human beings, stronger genetics, and with stronger genetics, there's better assimilation into the environment. So even though these viruses, kind of like when they're inside of you, there's a chance that the copying mistakes can happen, which causes the variants. Because remember, it's nothing but translation. DNA, RNA, tRNA, which is the translator, mRNA. The mRNA moves outside of the nucleus into the cytosol where the protein is built. So it's nothing more than translation. And if someone gave you a set of instructions, you ever build something in your house the wrong way? That's incorrect translation. So the result of that we call a variant. So you can say that your table that you were supposed to build the right way, if you got one part wrong, leg put on backwards, leg put in the wrong spot, missing bolt, that's a variant, because that missing piece could cause a difference in function. So that's the simplest explanation you get for what we would call variants and what we would call mutations. Now, mutations are just, it takes a while for them to define something as a mutation. It means that the change is just take the same thing as variant and just assume that the change is extremely significant. That's pretty much it. And that's what you get. So variant, we get the same, almost pretty much the same reactions. We're not talking about a little bit of difference in symptom. We get pretty much the same reactions, the same targeting, and that's what it is. With mutations, things kind of change a little bit. Like, it's almost like it's almost like if this connects well to the ACE2 receptor, the next one connects well to a tyrosine receptor. Like, you got to get like a drastic change, and then it takes time to verify before they call it a mutation. But they're technically the same thing. It's just extremities that's connected to it. That's all. So, but yeah, RNA viruses don't expect any end to that. It's just a change, a transfer of information with incorrect coding. That's it. So when you get a lot of people who have proper antibodies, those things get into people's bodies, and then those antibodies break that virus down real fast. There's less time for the virus to stick around, so there's less chances for it to travel around. And usually for it to travel around faster and meet that demand, you get the orange variant, so to speak, right? You get that specific variant, and that's what's, it leaps from person to person faster. Because I remember Layla Africa used to say, biological organisms that are sickly will multiply quickly. So it's like when you think that there's an issue in this sorry, a message came through, it's messing with my train of thought. So when you think that, lost my train of thought. I'll get back to that. I know I was talking about variants and mutations and stuff like that, but that message came through. It was just some stuff from the job. It messed up my train of thought. But yeah, when we're talking about mutations and variants, copying issues, that's what it is. Your body is supposed to, or the directions from the virus come in, and there's so many being churned out that eventually an incorrect copy is made, and that incorrect copy supersedes the one that exists or doesn't. There's a ton, trust me. If they were to name every little variation in the protein structure, we'd be out of letters by now, far out of letters. That's how much they don't name these things. They only name the ones that they think are significant, so that for tracking purposes. And that's it. We stay ahead of the game by knowing what's going on. We adjust our formula, and we're pretty much good to go from there. So that's what that whole thing is about. So if it's something to be crazy worried about, you'll know. You'll know on your own. Like it'll be kind of like how these movies show the zombie apocalypse. Like you see what these people like, they be like, yo, my man look cold and pale. They don't look too good. He coming at me kind of aggressive. It ain't time for me to reason with that. It's time for me to get the hell away. Like you'll know. And obviously, just like you have to treat yourself like the body. If something very dangerous is out there and you catch it, you need to warn everybody else. You don't need to be stingy and be like, well, I want everybody to treat me like I'm normal and I'm gonna just stay away. That self-preservation thing. It's not time for that. It's time for you to open your mouth and let people know so that they can get away and it doesn't spread, because you can be responsible for something spreading and being very damaging. But in this case, like I said, it's RNA. The people are not unified in knowledge to know what the hell they're doing, and economics get in the way. They don't have a way of solving the economic problem. If you could solve the economic problem, meaning everyone's going to have food, have money, and they could just tell everybody, like, look, y'all will be well taken care of. You'll have everything you need. Everybody just go in your house, shut in for a couple of weeks, and then we'll come back out and evaluate at that point. If they could do that, then that would be the easiest way to do it. Why? Because it's too hard to track with this many people in the world when something is worldwide. But because they got economic issues, you tell people to stay in the house and they're like, look, I got to go to work and I got to get this money. What you expect to happen? It's going to be people sticking their neck out and they're going to start to develop a sense of it's not that big of a deal. For a few of them, it will be. For the rest, they might be right. But it's going to piss the people off around them. So it's like problems causing more problems. And that's what's going on there. So we must be aware. We must follow protocols and precautions to the extent of what we know. The moment that I heard it was an RNA virus, it only took a couple of more days to sit back and kind of look at what was going on. And I knew right away, I was like, sound like it's going to be a big health issue. So people who have other health issues, and that was on both sides. That was when they came out with their answer to the problem, so to speak, right? And the problem itself. Like I knew right up front, I was like, oh, RNA joint, that's going to be like the flu, because they said it was a coronavirus. So they gave me an idea right there. So coronavirus, number one, it's going to have a really good mutation rate. It's going to have definitely flu-like symptoms. The best information they gave me was when they said that it attached to the receptor that it attached to, which was the H2 receptor, right? Then you come back south and all cars are autonomous. Well, that's tech, right? I mean, if we're mad about autonomous cars, we might as well be mad about the ones we got now, because they ain't doing nothing but putting out a lot of carbon emissions and stuff like that, right? So the tech is here. Remember, we are human beings. And as human beings, we're all going to have our areas that we want to search and check and figure out. And the moment that idea comes in and someone starts working in that thing, once we're all exposed to it, then you got to deal with it. And that's what happened with them. They exposed an idea to the world, and now they got to deal with it. So the idea was biological warfare. So if the idea is biological warfare, it needs to be biological warfare defense. If the idea is competing economically, which adds more to the pile, and it's like, well, my trains go 200 miles an hour. Someone else is going to make their train go 400 miles an hour. And then eventually we're going to look for technologies to move faster and ways to make it cheaper and more efficient. Spacing and, getting people around and hopefully you don't generate so much progress that people start to, this is where the Thanos concept comes into. People start, baby booming. Like there's babies every damn where, and we haven't quite figured out how to take care of them with the resources on Earth. Holistic people believe that the resources are always there. The status quo, so to speak, believe that the resources are finite and there's too many people consuming. So who's right? That's where the battleground actually is, right? And that's to each his own. Because I'll get some people saying, oh, there's tons of area in the world that haven't been used and land and stuff like that. But let me ask you something. Would you want your house on marshland? You got to take those things into account. Environment. Do you want to be in an environment where natural disasters are quite frequent? Do you want to be in an ultra cold climate? Is there plenty of room in the climate you want to be in? And if you can answer that question, then problem solved, right? So everything has an abundance point and everything has its own regulation cycle. That's why you notice in really packed cities, viruses transfer faster. Because if it's an electrical issue, like the book I got, the Invisible Rainbow says, if it's an electrical issue, remember, we all put out magnetic fields. So if we all put out magnetic fields, and then you got the Wi-Fi, and you got this and you got that going around, you got such electric smog going around in the area, the body is like trying to reshape itself so fast that you wind up with all these extra problems. So spacing is a really big deal. You need it in daycares. People who have children know that daycares can't open and have a certain amount of children in it if they don't have the square feet for that amount of, for that child. So, this is why they called Thanos in Marvel. They didn't call him an enemy. And, the funniest common response I hear people say is, why didn't he just snap his finger and give resources to all the people? Because if he does that, then he gives the people another reason to explode the population even further, bringing the world closer to the result he said his planet had. He said there were so many people that they started to fight over resources and destroy one another, and it eventually destroyed his planet. We got to think, is that concept possible in a world full of people who only care about self? Yes. The problem is the only people taking it into account is rich people. And then the people who are not that rich are going to say, who are you to make a judgment over my life? Like, I didn't get a chance to qualify myself to be one of those people to answer that question. Y'all just making your decision that you're going to depopulate. And you get to pick and choose, and you created the problem that makes you have to depopulate those people. That's unfair to them. You see what I mean? So there's a moral dilemma behind this whole thing, right? The next war will be about water. They've been talking about water shortages for a long time. So I guess it behooves us to know how to purify our water. If y'all haven't gotten them yet, I don't have one in the car, but they got these pumps. They're very small pumps. They look like bike air pumps, but they're much smaller. And when you could draw, like, literally, you could find the dirtiest water in like New York and draw that joint out of the river, and it'll squirt clean water back in your cup. It only gets 1,000 filters, but 1,000 is a lot. If you're talking about a shortage, 1,000 will get you pretty far. What you will lose with a shortage of water is the ability to exert a lot of energy. Because remember, when you work out, you sweat, and when you sweat, you have to replace it with water. When you cook, you have to have water. When you have plants growing, you have to have water, which means now you're going to be more reliant on the weather again. And if they have technology that controls weather, they can control how you control your own situation. So, and we know HARP was about that. HARP is not a conspiracy theory. You can look that up. They have technologies of cloud seeding and stuff like that. Those are not conspiracy theories. So, yeah, so learning how to purify water. I can tell you this, for those trying to help themselves, look up sand and charcoal methods. Look up a 100% cotton methods. I had a book called How to Survive in the Aftermath of a Cataclysm. And one of the things they said is if you have a 100% cotton t-shirt and you run water through it, it'll purify 99% of the water. The rest of it, you gotta get different elements for it. Like Brita filters use charcoal. So keep that in mind. So charcoal, sand, you can even do things like, let's say you fill up a bathtub of water, put a drop of bleach in it, and wait 2 days. So there's different methods of survival that you can learn, sometimes just out of text. Like there are, like, I don't know if I want to call them grimoires, but there are books that literally say like, yo, this is the core pick technology that will keep a person alive. Like the MPK rule, soil turnover. Like you can only grow certain fruits and veggies in the soil for so long before the ground needs a rest. And that's actually a biblical concept. Like there's a time where you let the ground rest and you don't do nothing. Like you grow this, you grow that, and then you chill. And you let nature take its course. Now, what's one of the ways that nature rebalances soil? Flood. Because when volcanoes erupt, a lot of that now water seeks its own level, but lava kind of does it too. The lava can cool through the air. When it moves enough, it rolls over the ground and it hit that air and the rain and eventually getting into the rivers, cool all of it down. So once it gets in the rivers, what is technically molten lava? That's liquid mineral from below the earth. When that gets into the ocean and it cools down, now you got minerals in the ocean. So those mineral salts. If it rains a lot and the ocean rises, because first we got to remember, the molten lava goes in the ocean. It doesn't just go to the bottom and there's a big ass rock just sitting there. Just like in your body, it's osmotic pressures, meaning the liquid and the mineral find their own levels together and they move until it self-balances. It does the same thing in the ocean because minerals weigh a certain amount and so does the ocean. So it causes it to balance and find its own level, which makes the ocean salty. Otherwise, all the mineral would sink to the bottom and the top would just taste like water. So the fact that it moves around a lot, creating things like sea mosses and algae and stuff like that, right? Eventually, when it rains a lot and the water rises, it covers over the land. and the land absorbs a lot of that water, and the plants absorb a lot of that water. And because the water's salty, it's delivering minerals into that soil. So eventually, when the floods recede, it's called runoff. In the video, I talk about the four parts of the water cycle. The waters will, when it starts to subside, when those oceans subside, that stuff runs back into the ocean. And when it runs back into the ocean, anything that the land grabbed up is still there. Now you got fertile soil that you can grow on. Answers the question, right? Why a lot of the ancient civilizations built near the Nile? Water. Water is very important, right? So we got Smuggles in the building. No, Snuggles, not Smuggles. Smuggles is actually a major Street Fighter tournament player. They call him Smuggles is his name, or Smug. He just goes under the name Smug. So I see Smuggles. That's what I thought about. But yeah. So that's how the Earth remineralizes itself. And you got to keep in mind, this is in the video where I did my presentation, I talked about pressure mediation. Everything's pressure mediation. So if we're on Earth doing so much that we put a pressure on the Earth, then the Earth's natural response to the pressure, like you push far this way, something's trying to push back. If you push harder and harder, eventually the further you get away, the harder that thing's trying to snap back. So if we were to shut everything down, nature would snap back very fast. And now you would get what you're starting to get now when things go unchecked. You start to have a rise in natural disasters because that's the Earth moving things faster than it was supposed to do long ago, but we prevented it by messing with things. So you keep drilling into the ground and, you keep emitting all these carbons and, you're breaking up the ozone layer. So the sun's penetrating harder. You cause, the winds and the waves to crash a lot more, causes the tectonic plates below the ground to shift more, causing earthquakes. You cause enough earthquakes. You cause enough changes in the sky from introducing too much water into the air. You get tornadoes and you get all kinds of stuff happening. All this heat builds up below ground because as things cool above, things heat up below. As above, so below. More volcanoes erupt. More volcanoes erupt to try and balance the two back out. And if we keep fighting back against it, the chances of those things happening get greater if we don't check it and self-reduce it, or if we don't just kind of find out where we are and just take the hit. So it's a couple of ways to go about it, right? But yeah, guys, that's enough of me rambling. I gotta get in the building. It's an honors event today over in Radnor, PA. So some kids is getting some awards. That's always a good thing. So I'm gonna go take some photos of them getting some awards. I'm gonna turn it in. I just wanted to check in, ramble a little bit with you guys because, like I said, they had me cut for a little bit, which is can happen. So I guess at this point now we got to do some word avoiding. It is what it is, but yeah, I'll start checking in again as long as they don't pull the page down again. Make sure if you guys are not doing it, you're following me over on Instagram because that's how you would have known that I was shut down for a little bit. And depending on how many people are actually watching me on Instagram will make me go live there. Because usually when I'm live on Instagram, there's only like 3 people around on average. So for that reason, I'm rare to go live on Instagram. But every once in a blue moon, I do. But on here, people tend to know. So, all right, peoples. Good rocking with y'all for a little bit. I'm going to step up in the building. I'm going to drink my orange drink a little bit. And I'm going to head on in and take some pictures of some achieving children. Y'all have a good night. I'll catch y'all in a little bit. Love y'all. Catch y'all in a little bit.